welcome back. And we're moving into our first conversation for today. We are joined on set by the Leader of the Opposition, Honorable John Briceno. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Marlene John. Good morning.
Good morning.
As always, it's quite a pleasure to be here on OYA on such with wonderful company early in the morning. It's a good way to start the morning.
Well, we appreciate you being here, and of course, we're getting a preview as to what we can imagine will unfold in the House over the next 2 days. I was saying earlier that given all the other national issues we've been discussing, the budget conversation has been a bit on the back burner, but it is a very important conversation to have. And in fact, the debate starting tomorrow will offer Belizeans your insight and your party's insight into what has been presented. Your initial reaction was that it was all glitter and no substance.
No glitter and no substance. Okay. The Prime Minister has been known as a man with all glitter and no substance, and this one was no glitter and no substance. It was a lifeless budget.
Yeah.
But before I get into this, please give me 30 seconds to thank the Belizean people for that came out to vote on the municipal elections. Despite everything, you know, it shows a level of maturity among the Belizean people that we could argue and we could rail up and we could, but on election day we come out and we vote and then we go home. And then we accept the following day the results. And that by itself speaks volumes for us as a country.
Yes.
But even more important for us as a party, we want to thank all those that gave us the support. It has shown a complete swing. In 2015, we lost the popular votes. When you just tally everybody, the votes that everybody got, okay. We lost by about 94,000 votes. This time, 92,000 votes. This time, we won the popular votes by 4,000 votes. So it's a swing of about 97,000 votes. It's an incredible turnaround, and it goes to show that the support and the confidence that the people are starting, they are once again giving our party. But that said, going back to the budget, as we pointed out, it was a lifeless budget. It's almost, you feel as the Prime Minister is just going through the motions, you know, okay, I have to go and give another budget. Like, he has checked out. I mean, I don't think he has any interest or any passion for being the Prime Minister. And it shows in his body language, in his words, you know, in his presentation, you know, just one of the worst budgets ever, just in its presentation.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a bit, because I think obviously it was important to be able. It is always important to grow the revenue, and I think when the announcement was made before the reading of the budget that there would be no new taxes, the first question is, well, where are you going to generate your revenue from? And I know it's a matter of semantics in terms of whether a tax on data is a new tax or just rolling out the tax in that specific area. But looking at the areas where they're proposing to generate revenue, what's your perspective on how beneficial it will actually be for us?
Well, first of all, it is important to point out that just by the actual numbers, you can know that the Prime Minister is not being truthful. Because as it is, revenues fell, he was $100 million short. We had a deficit of $124 million. And that is because now he's being very cute. He's talking about a below the line item. I remember when, you know, it reminds me of his BFF, no? Former Mayor of Belize Citizen, Ida Moya, when she was talking about under depositing. And he is even claiming that the IMF allows him to do this under the line, below the line item. There's no such thing in the IBM and the IMF's lexicon. You either spend the money or didn't. And if you spend it, you have to classify it somewhere. You just can't say, okay, well, put it on here. It's like, you know, when you're balancing your checkbook, you know, and you go to the bank, well, this one, you know, I don't really put it in, I put it on the side. You have to give account for it. It has spent. So when you include what he has spent for BTL, the budget deficit, I mean, is over $300 million. So it's far worse than what he is presenting. So obviously he has to come with some kind of new taxes. The economy is not growing. Look at this. A year in 2016, the economy contracted by 1%. Last year he was claiming that they were going to have over 2% growth. They had 0.5%. So we haven't caught up with what we lost in 2016. This year, he's saying no, that we're going to have 1.5 to 2%, and he just almost picking up numbers with nothing to back it up. And when you couple that with the population growth, it's some kind of technical, but it is very important that our population is growing by 3% every year, but the economy is growing at less than 1%. In effect, we are having more and more poor people in the system because the economy can't keep up with them. Now, when you look at the taxes, when he's saying about no new taxes, taxing data is a new tax. No matter how you look on it, upside down, sideways, whatever, it is a new tax. And data now plays a critical role in the lives of every citizen in this country. Maybe 10 years ago, only rich people could have afforded internet. Everybody now needs internet. From the richest Belizean to the poorest Belizean, because even the children at school need access to the internet. And then look at business. At one time, only the big businesses had access to the internet. Now almost every business needs internet. Look at the BPOs, you know, these are the call centers, you know, which is one of the few bright spots that we have. Now they are going to be taxing them data 12.5%, so their cost is going to start to creep up considerably and will make us less competitive in the region. So again, the Prime Minister, because he's desperate for money, you know, try to find any and every way to try to get some more money to keep this insatiable appetite that he has for more and more money to spend. When you look at what is now that he is taxing now even the productive, the agro-productive sector, again, a very important sector of the economy. This is the group that brings in the foreign currency in this country. And now he's taxing, you know, for instance, with the cane farmers. I met with the leaders of the cane farmers 2 nights ago. They wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. All three associations signed a letter telling the Prime Minister that this is craziness, that as it is right now, working with BSI, they have been trying to move away from cutting cane by hand because there's a shortage of cane cutters. And because of the shortage, the prices have continued to escalate. The prices of diesel continues to go up, transportation continues to go even higher. And that by starting to charge GST on this activity, it is going to make the little monies that they've been saving by going on to mechanized harvesting, now that is going to be taxed. They're going to be losing. They're not going to be making any money. It's crazy or stupid to do something like that.
Now, I understand your point of view, and we have seen the releases coming out from the agro-productive sector. But the argument is that there has to be a way to generate money for the country.
I agree 1,000% with that statement. And you do that by growing the economy. And that is where the Prime Minister and the UDP, the Borough Faber government has failed terribly. I mean, to the detriment of the Belizean people. He has been fighting from day one with every single businessman or woman that gets in front of him. The minute you question him, you become enemy number one. And by fighting the private sector, what happens? Everybody pulls back and says, well, I don't trust this government. I don't know what is it they're going to do. I don't want my name to be dragged on the news and all over the place. So people sit back. And that is why the economy has not been growing. And until you address that fundamental issue, you can tax people to death. And what is going to happen? We're going to continue going, spiraling down instead of improving the lives of the citizens of this country.
You know, and I'm just from you mentioning improving the lives of the citizens of this country, one fact, the younger generation makes up the population of this country, makes up the majority of the population of this country. And for some reason or the other, the young people of this country has no clue as to what the budget is, what it means to have a budget, and how these things are passed. As a matter of fact, the younger people would tell you straight up, I have no interest in that, when in reality, these are the people who will be taking the brunt of the lick. Because, one, they are the majority of the population. Why should they take heed of this, Mr. Briceno? Why should they take heed of this, and how important is this to them? Because, and I'm asking this because it is, you know, it irks the country when people say they don't care, and because there is always a political impact or always a political fight. The red or blue one there say the same thing. Now, why should we take heed of these things?
Let's not be hard on young people. I was young once too, you know.
I'm still young.
I know all. But when I was young, I never bothered looking or listening to no budget.
But it's
You
important.
know, I agree, but the point I'm making, let's not be hard on young people. I mean, they have so many other things that are more interesting to them, or in their mind, what is even more important than a budget. It does not mean that it's not important. But now with technology, with television and the internet and Facebook, they're starting to get more and more exposed to what is happening. So I think they are becoming more informed. But what is important that they just don't take whatever they read on Facebook and say, oh, it is true. Because in many instances, it's not Facebook, it's Facebook. We got a lot of things in the Facebook that are not true. So they are being more exposed. So that's a positive. But we also have to ensure, I think it is important to know that the schools, especially in high schools and sixth forms, you know, start to have some time to discuss the budget. Because the budget has a direct impact on your life. Be it young or middle age or old, it has a direct impact on your life. And as to the young people, it is important that the decisions we are doing today is going to affect them now. And certainly as they start to work and get into the productive sector, because they will have to be producing and paying the taxes and paying the debt. For instance, remember when the Prime Minister was beating the PUP government back coming to 2008 about the debt that we borrowed and this and making this huge issue. When he got into government in 2008, the debt was at 85% of GDP. Just a few weeks ago, the financial secretary pointed out that the debt is already at 100% of GDP. Look, and I know it's a lot of numbers. The Borough Farmer government have spent almost $11 billion, you know, since they got into government. 11 billion, like what they like to say with a B. They squandered $600 million of our petroleum or oil money. Oil done, money gone. They spent about $450 million of Petro-Caribbean funds. Almost all of that has been gone. They squandered it. And what do we have to show for it? Poverty continues to be a major problem in this country. We have crime. We have unemployment. We have an economy that's collapsing. We have problems with citrus. We have problems with bananas. We have problems with shrimps. We have problems in the sugar industry. The papaya industry has gone. You know, the only bright spots that we have is tourism and the BPOs, the call centers. We have a government that's clueless. I remember way back in 2010, I was alerting the government during our budget debates that we have a problem with the productive sector. For instance, let's look at citrus. Citrus coming to 2009, we were delivering about 7 million crates of oranges. Production has gone on right now. This year is going to be probably under 3 million because of the citrus greening. And I was telling them, we need to get some money to our small farmers. We have Petro-Caribbean, we're only paying 1%. You know what we could have done with that money if we would have invested it in the productive sector? We could have rescued the citrus industry. You know, we could have helped the farmers in the north with their, because they have high loans that they have to pay to the bank. It's almost like I borrow this year, I pay it off, and next year I have to go borrow again, because, you know, you just say, they take 2 steps forward and come 2 steps backwards, you know, they move ahead. We could have done so much with that money to put it in the productive sector, but what did they do? Contracts after contract infrastructure, because that is where the hustling has taken place.
You know, and let's dive into that further, because I think the tax on the productive sector is one that has to be explored further in terms of what impact it will have. And you've had conversations with these entities already. You are very right in saying that there are quite a number of challenges in the agricultural sector, whether it's the bacteria at the shrimp farm or citrus greening, or even when there are weather changes for the sugar industry. What are they saying in terms of the impact of this particular tax?
It's going to kill them. They are at a crisis level. And for the government to put another tax on them, everywhere you go, there has not been a single person in agriculture that have said, you know, it is a good tax. Nobody want to pay tax, but could say, you know what, all right, we could live with it. I met with some Mennonites yesterday morning, pointing out to me, says, if we have to do this, then, for instance, the corn that we're growing, you know, the soy that we're growing, we are going to get out of business. He basically told me, he said, there's about 20 families in Indian Creek that are saying, if they continue with these kind of taxes and we see no way ahead, say we're leaving. We can go to Mexico. Mexico is offering us opportunity. Mexico is offering land and financing so that they can do agriculture. But they love Belize, and Belize have the right. We have the climate, we have the land, we have the water, but we have a bad government that's giving them no sense of direction as to how to get their produce from the field to the market.
Are we in a worse situation now than back then VAT? Value-added tax?
Than the value-added tax.
Mm-hmm. What's the comparison at this particular point?
Well, what is happening now? What is happening is that now that the government, they're just trying to find any and every way where to tax. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily which one is worse. Mm-hmm. It is just about that now you're trying to tax any and everything that you can think about. You're becoming even creative in trying to find new ways of increasing tax. Yeah. At the end of the day, it is how much tax you collect. I think right now we are at about 27%, I think, of GDP in taxes, which is extremely high. Mm-hmm. Countries like the United States, they're way below the 20%. It means that we are overtaxing our people. But we are doing that because the economy is not growing. This government, the UDP government, all they want to do is fight with everybody. And then they hustle on the side. When you have ministers, for instance, when you have Minister Montero, paid about $40,000 for different parcels of land in the Hamburger Ski and in the Privación Enclave in the Mountain Parage area, and collected about $5 million. Not even Lotto give you that kind of returns. And what does the Prime Minister do? When he had his press conference after the municipal elections, he sat Montero right beside him, like almost to give you the middle finger. What you want about it as what? It is what it is. That's what he's saying. The same thing he said about Vega, he's saying about Montero and saying about Moots Martinez. He doesn't care. He has checked out. He's ready to go at any moment. But he can't leave because if he leaves, his government is going to fall apart. And there's this massive fight between Saldivar and Farber. And so now he had, because of the internal dissent within his party, he had to reward Saldivar by giving him national security. The very same Minister of Police that failed when he was there and was removed because of a suspicion over his head, that still remains to this day.
But I really want to go back to the issue, and I think one of the challenges we have in discussing the budget, and John pointed it out with the younger people, but I think it's across the board. Not everybody understands exactly what it means. And I think if we relate it to a very real experience that people have, which is living paycheck to paycheck or living with payday loans that they can never recover from. And one of the things that we know, if you're struggling and you're not able to make ends meet, you either have to make more money or you have to cut down on your expenses. And that's very similar to what we're seeing in the larger economy in the country. One of the criticisms that we've heard is perhaps the focus on cutting down expenses for the country. And in this budget, it's looking at capital projects, which are your infrastructure projects. What are your thoughts on being able to cut down on how much is being spent on capital projects as a way of cutting down expenses, especially knowing that public wages still carry a large amount of the money that's coming out of our coffers?
As a person that's involved in several businesses, as a businessman, I can tell you that when your business is slow down, you need to find how you could increase revenues. You could fire some people, but that will not necessarily be the answer. The long-term answer might be a short-term. What do we have to do? We have to try to look at other markets or try to do marketing to create more awareness so that people will buy your product. The same thing applies to government. when the government starts cutting down on capital investment, it's a stupid move, because then you are basically saying that, you know what, only a hold and keep the light open, but I'm not invest for tomorrow, because that is what capital investment is all about investing for tomorrow where you expect to get a greater return. What has happened though is that in these capital investments, this is where the most graft has taken place. The whole issue of corruption that has taken place. I mean, when you look at the food pantry, that is, you know, the poverty reduction programs that are done through the capital expenditure, that's supposed to be a good thing, but has been taken advantage by the political directorate. It's not working. It's certainly not working. I see that the Prime Minister feels that that is the easiest thing to do. But there are certain things that has to be addressed. I mean, and I know it's not politically right, but for instance, the issue of pensions. When we left government, when we were in 2008, I think the pensions that we have to pay out to government, the retired government employees was about 50 million. Today it's about 80 million. And you know, as a government, we'll have to address that sooner or later. That we just can't continue to be paying all these pensions where the government employee is also not contributing towards their pension. That by itself is something that needs to be addressed. We need to look at the government bureaucracy. You know, it has grown tremendously under the UDP. When we were in government, there were about 12,000 government employees. Today, it's about 17,000. So, you know, their way of addressing the issue of unemployment was just to hire people and hiring their people. And in many instances, I went to speak to a class. I think it was on public sector management at UB in Bamopan. Most of the students there are government employees, like mid-level managers. And they said that they found it disgusting that in many instances, political hacks have been sent to work in their ministries. And because they've been sent by the minister, these people believe that they don't have to do anything. And some of them come in as their bosses, not knowing anything. You know, and this kind of political patronage needs to come to an end. I mean, we just can't continue to afford it. Now, it would be easy to say, all right, yeah, I'll get rid of half of the, but that is not going to address the issue. Why? Because the economy is in such a bad state. It starts with the economy. We have to win back the confidence of the private sector, both local and international, so that they can come and invest. There are so many opportunities in this country that we are not taking advantage of. Here we have Mexico right next to us that is dying to sign a partial scope agreement with us, that then we can send our produce into Mexico, our grains, our corn, our beans, our soy, our cattle, or pork. You know, there's so many things that we can sell. We don't need to go far, you know, right? Or shrimp, you know, or fish. So, but our government is not interested in that.
And that's a very good point to go on, because I think while we can dissect the budget itself, one of the things that we don't hear is what are the opportunities that we're missing? Why is it so challenging to find opportunities to grow the economy without looking at the tax structure, or maybe not focusing solely on the tax structure, I should say?
I wish I could put it more respectfully, but if you are surrounded by dodo birds, nothing is going to happen. And I am sorry.
But from your perspective, what are we missing?
I have just been telling you that.
Yes.
That we have a government that has no economic plan. From 2008, when I was first the leader of the opposition, I've been telling the government, we need to have an economic plan. What is it that you want to do? Where is it that you want to get Belize in the next 5, 10, 20 years? For instance, we in the PUP, we're saying that the new PUP government is going to set 4 targets. The first one, we need to reduce poverty by 50% in 10 years. It won't be easy and be difficult, but we have to put targets. The second one is that we need to reduce our trade deficit by 50% in 10 years. As it is right now, our trade deficit. In effect, we are spending, we are importing over $1 billion more than what we export. We can't continue like that because we are going to have a devaluation because we're not getting U.S. money. So we have to reduce that by 50% in 10 years. That means that we have to work with the productive sector, with the private sector. We have to increase production. We have to learn to eat what we produce, and we have to produce what we eat, and then export. You have to export. We have Mexico, we have Central America, we have CARICOM that we can take advantage of. The third, that by doing this, then we could push for full employment for young people and women, because then that means your economy is growing. And then when your economy is growing and people are working, what happens? Personal safety gets better. Crime goes down because people are working. So those are 4 goals or 4 targets that we are picking. So we are already coming in mind, what is it that we want to do? Because at the end of the day, we are saying that we want a Belize that works for everyone. As it is right now, only a few small group of people have been benefiting under this government. I mean, you can name them, I mean, and I don't want to shame them right now, that have become millionaires over the past 10 years. We know them, we see the lifestyle, man. When I take a picture with one Bentley and put it on Facebook, it's almost like, give you the middle finger, see where I get now, you know? But the point is that if the government does not have a plan, they go nowhere. If you like when somebody, what if you fail to plan, you plan to fail? Yeah. That's exactly what has happened with this government.
But so, while we discuss budget and how things can be better for our people, and you did mention CARICOM, one of the things that stuck out to me is CSME and the fact that we're actually importing a lot of goods from the Caribbean, but we're not exporting. Is this working for us? CSME?
We have to be more aggressive with especially Trinidad, Barbados, and Jamaica. They are giving us a lot of trouble right now with our sugar because they want to import the cheap sugar from I think from Guatemala. As it is right now, CARICOM imports about 450,000 tons of refined sugar. The sugar that we are producing right now in Belize, it is like a small fraction of a percent different from the refined sugar that they're importing. You can't tell the difference.
Which is basically on par.
Precisely. And right now what BSI have been, they have been doing is that they're moving from raw sugar to what they call direct consumption sugar. They expect this year to be able to export into CARICOM 50,000 tons of that direct consumption sugar, which will then improve the price for our cane farmers. But in CARICOM, in these countries, they are fighting us the tooth and nail to prevent that from happening. Now, I believe that then if you know import free sugar, then we know import your stuff. Grace Kennedy, millions of dollars they import. And I'm not singling them out, but I'm just using that as an example. We import a lot of food from them with a preferential tax code that allows them to be competitive from what we bring from Mexico and from the United States and Central America. So then we have to play the same game. You don't buy free sugar, then we don't buy your stuff. I'm sorry. Again, the future of this country, I mean, CARICOM is a very important partner for Belize. I would never take that away. Historically, and especially when it comes to the Belize-Guatemala referendum, they unfound the claim from Guatemala, and we are eternally grateful for CARICOM. But really, the future of this country is with Mexico and Central America. We have huge markets. We have a market of 130, 140 million people surrounding us, that it's so easy to get our products from Belize to them, or that they can bring some of their products here and we can build value add on those products and export it into the Caribbean and Europe, where we have certain preferential markets which are quickly disappearing.
Now, I think one of the things that I obviously hear from you is looking at the lack of strategies in a long-term vision of building the economy. And one of the things that we are not focusing on as well is the payments that we have to make in the future. We are not growing the economy sufficiently. It is expected, obviously, as we look at the payments that are to come for the super bond, that we should be in a better position then. What are your thoughts on whether we'll be able to make the first bullet payment if we continue on this path?
Why are you doing this to me?
I'm asking you the questions. You provide the answers.
No, but seriously, and it worries me, and the people that I have around me, that economists and business people, we are very concerned with the level of debt. As I said, the government has increased debt by $1.3 billion. They bought a white elephant in BTL. They spent, when you sum it up, they paid about $580+ million for BTL. If the Prime Minister would have only looked at the financial statements, we'd have seen the book value of the company is it was around $240 million. When you look at the dividends that is paid and you use a formula at 10% rate of return, the company is worth under $200 million. So you buy pussy in a bag. And this was happening just because of the Prime Minister's ego. And then who pay for it? We pay for it. So the debt is something that is very, very serious. And we have to find a way how we're going to address it. There's no panacea, there's no silver bullet, but it just was going to require hard work. Again, coming up with a plan. We may have to do more debt consolidation and a more long-term plan. As I always tell people when they ask me advice when it comes to business, I always say, borrow long, pay short. Because if you borrow long, your payments are small, but you try to pay more than what than your payment plan. But if any day you find a rainy day, you could still make your payments. And that principle should also apply to government and its borrowing.
At the helm as we speak is the KHMH. This is a national hospital. Anything happens across this country, everybody has to go there. It doesn't matter who you are. The budget is out. You guys will be debating this budget tomorrow and Friday. Is there anything in there, knowing that they knew the situation a long time ago, is there anything there that speaks about the KHMH?
Absolutely not. They're
Why?
coming to the same subvention that they give every year to KHMH. And I think what is even, I think to me what is even more alarming is that the government knew, the Prime Minister knew, the Minister of Health knew that there's a structural problem at Carl Huchner as far back as 2010. Chancellor Lever's sister was the operations manager. And so they knew. They had the Petro-Caribbean money that they could have used to fix the building. But they did not. Right now, they have cut down operations, at least the press release I saw was out about 50% of the services that they are providing. This is the Poor People Hospital. If you need an operation or whatever, where do you go? Most people go to Carl Huchner. They can't go to Belize Healthcare Partners, or they can't go to Medical Associates, which, by the way, talking about healthcare partners, I think the Prime Minister needs to go and get the 49% of shares that we own for Belize Healthcare Partners. But again, because of his ego, he does not want to do that, because he wants Belizeans to believe that we don't own nothing there. And you know what's so ironic? That they have to run to healthcare partners for help, to help them with some of the patients that they were taking at the Carl Huchner. It's so ironic that they had to go to the same hospital that he has vilified. Now, again, with a little bit of money, I think that you already have 49%, that you could speak to Dr. Vinny, who own, and his company, the people that own the other 51%, and if necessary, could probably buy over the healthcare partners. I'm not suggesting that, I'm just saying that he can, but because of his ego and his arrogance, we are in this situation. We need to hold the Prime Minister responsible, because he knew the problem at Carl Huchner. He was the Minister of Finance. He had the money accessible from Petro-Caribbean to be able to do something about it. And now here we are, where our premier institution, hospital institution now, can only offer 50% of its services.
You know, one of the things that we don't look at when we talk about the budget is the budget allocations for specific ministries. And when we talk about the Ministry of Health, for example, we know that most ministries have attempted to cut down their own individual budgets. But looking at the area of health, for example, when we talk about investment in KHMH, and especially human development, where we're seeing such critical issues taking place within our community. What are your thoughts on what investments, and these are investments that you don't see immediate results. These are long-term solutions, helping a family out of poverty, a child to be able to have a better quality of life. These things won't show in time for the next election. But what are your thoughts on the investments there?
Well, when it comes to the Ministry of Health, I mean, we've had one minister since 2008, and that's Pablo Marin. And I think that he has given little attention to the actual infrastructure. Where his interest has been is the procurement of medicines. In 1 year, they procured almost $20 million of medicines that they did not need, and they had it, I think, at the BDF camp in warehouses or in containers, and some of it probably even spoiled. And that we know there's massive hustling when it comes to the procurement of medicines, but he has such a tight control over it that we can't get our hands to it. But we're going to get our hands there sooner or later, and we're going to expose what has happened there. Human development. Listen, look at what, when we were in government, when we had Dolores Baleramos Garcia as the Minister of Human Development, with probably half of the budget that is now available, she did a lot of work for families, for young people, and for children. She strengthened the laws for women, giving them more rights, and had programs that were starting to see results. But then we put Boots Martinez, I mean, no disrespect to him as a person, but he has no interest in that kind of work. And then here we have spending monies on poverty reduction programs and the pantry, and we're hearing a lot of stuff that is going on there. You know, that the monies is being used as political patronage as opposed to being used to really address the people that needs. It could be a good program that if it is managed properly and transparently, that it can bring massive results back. I mean, for instance, when you can go to parents and giving them a small subsidy every month to ensure that their children go to school, trying to come up with some small feeding programs so these children go to school hungry. You know, it can go a long way and can really make the lives of these children better. Look at what is happening to us in the south side of Belize City. It's almost like genocide is happening there, where our young people there shooting one another. And I think Cordell said it best. We don't take the time to have these people to sit around a table to talk and get to know one another, and realizing that, you know, if I shoot your son, it is probably a cousin of my friend or somebody. We are all interrelated. And then so the killing goes indiscriminately. That is why we are saying yesterday that it is time for us to, instead of declare a state of emergency in areas of the south side, we need to declare the south side a special development zone, where then we already have the money in the budget for human development and for poverty reduction. Then we could take that money and put it in there, put the capital, the financial and human capital in there to start to change their people's life. Ensure that these children go to school. A lot of them are not going to school, either because of the parents or because they don't have the financial wherewithal, or they don't have a shoes to go to school, or they don't have food, or they don't have the books.
Their community.
And that is why I said a part of it is to sit the people around a table for a good talk. We need to be able to start to encourage businesses to go and operate there by giving them tax exempts and tax incentives. We need to make sure that the DFC reprogram itself and put special programs for people that if you want to open only ice cream parlor or you want to only business in there, we can do it. Look at this. We have thousands of children that go to school every year. So we import thousands of school bags. What would it take to organize some of these women in the south side to say, okay, we are so school bags. stop the importation of school bags, and make we produce them right here just to create employment. Look at one side, Social Security, this was talking about importing uniforms from Trinidad. You know, remember, what almost $200,000 I think they were going to spend. When that could be done here, we have some of the best, you know, seamstresses. But there is no political will to try to organize that, to create opportunities for these people, so that, you know, we need to be able to empower our people in Southside. And it's not something, criminality is not ethnic based or genetic based or anything. It's because of the environment that you live.
Now, you know, I appreciate the ideas that you're bringing to the table, and I think the challenge, and I'm sure it's a greater challenge for you, is that you're not in a position to execute. Our society and the people of this country right now are in a very dark place. They're very cynical. They feel, I think the sense of trauma we have in Belize City with all the crime that is going on and not enough action, it has left people almost, I think we should just say that they are frustrated, right?
That's putting it mildly.
I know, and that's what I was going to say.
Or nicely.
But the point is, people want to hear solutions. They also want to see them as well. What can you do as the opposition, besides bringing the issues to the table, which is important, and also offering suggestions? We also hear that you have offered yourself to be a part of a bipartisan approach to some of these issues. They haven't been taken up as yet. But what do you tell the people of Belizeans who are so frustrated at this point in time with numerous issues in the country, to offer a sense of hope and not just add to the sense of helplessness that exists?
There's hope with a new PP government, that we have been putting a lot of attention to these very pressing issues that we know that we have to address head on. Easier said than done. It's not going to be an easy ride. It's going to be a very bumpy ride, especially at the beginning, in trying to make the structural adjustments that we have to do. And I know that apart from the crime and the cost of living, the lack of opportunities, one of the things that irks or galls people or get them so upset is the issue of corruption. That the Prime Minister was voted on the mantra of fighting corruption. People even didn't listen to what he got to say about the economy, and maybe that's why we're in this position. We bought line, hook, and sinker the Prime Minister's song about he's going to fight corruption and the special machete. You know, he can be so flowery with words. I mean, and we have to give him credit for that. But his actions nowhere close to what he has promised. Yeah. He has failed miserably. Today, we have the most corrupt government this country has ever seen. And unfortunately, he's the one that said, well, give me one more proof. And he defends, you give the proof, John Saldiva, he defends Saldiva. Give me the proof for Vega, give it to him, he protects them. And all his ministers, that's what he has been doing. This country, we, the new UP government, we have to practice good governance. And I know Belizeans don't want to hear it because they say, I don't believe you know, because they were baroque down the way. That is why we're saying that we are not going to police ourselves. I am talking about setting up an anti-corruption agency that is going to be totally and completely independent from the government of Belize. We will provide them budget, and yes, they are going to be, the board is going to be compromised and set up by, you know, the major political parties and the civil society and everybody, so they know. But the person that is going to be at the helm, I believe, has to be somebody that has no connection with anybody in this country. That is why I'm thinking about then going to the United Nations and write them and say, give me 3 names that you think that can run this. Pass the legislation, and then that person comes in and investigates whosoever you want to investigate. If it is a previous minister, or if it's a present minister, me as the Prime Minister or anybody in our government cannot stop them. They need to be able to go after these people, and who is held responsible have to answer. I don't want to run a government that is on a witch hunt. I want to be focused solely in creating opportunities for this country, turning things around, so then you have an independent body that is going to be looking after that. And so I want to then tell my colleagues, see how they are investigating other ministers or previous ministers. If you don't walk the straight line, you are also going to be right there, and we will not be able to protect you. That's the only way I believe, or one way in where we can go towards good governance and ending or trying to curb the scourge of corruption in government.
Now, before we
and not
wrap
only
up,
politicians, but also even the public officers are going to be in this whole net.
I appreciate what you said, and before we wrap up, I want to say this much. You have been given, we're moving from the national to the local. The People's United Party has been given that opportunity to show how you can do differently. The win in Belize City, it is widely believed, is based on the frustration people feel on the national issues and the corruption they've been seeing. Now, obviously, having a municipal body and the central government being of the UDP will pose as challenges. But how are you working with the Belize City Council to ensure that what they represent over the next 3 years is fitting within exactly what you said could be a potential future if the PUP comes back into central government?
Well, one of the first things that I've said to all 3 municipalities, you are representing us, the party. This country is going to judge us based on your actions. Yes. So everybody is going to be watching you. So you have to make sure that you walk the straight and narrow line, that you are in there to try to provide the necessary service of the people that you represent, be it in Corozal, Orange Walk, or Belize City. What we have advised to Mayor Bernard in Belize City, I know we have 2 Bernards, no? Kevin Bernard and Bernard Wagner, so we have Bernard Square. I believe that he needs to get an independent auditor to come in and audit the financials of Belize City and also in Corozal Town, so that then they can go to the citizens of this country, of Belize City, and said, you know what, this is what we found. It's not our numbers, it's an independent auditor that did that. And then from that, have to start to really work on the streets and look at what Kevin Bernard did in Orange Walk Town. You know, despite the fact that government did not give them an extra cent from the, apart from their subvention, which they get every year, you have to work with the community. You have to be able to collect your property taxes and the trade licenses and everything. Kevin Bernard in Orange Walk was successful. He managed to take property taxes collection from about 38% to over 90%. And he did that simply by one, he had to redo the entire tax roll and make sure that everybody is being taxed fairly. Not be, oh, you're the PUP, so I reduce it. Marlena, UDP, when I raise it, that had to stop. Once people feel that you're being fair and that you are using their monies wisely and that they can see how it is being spent, people want pay. People want pay. And that, I think that what Bernard Wagner has said, that he is looking at Kevin Bernard from Orange Walk as an example of what can be done with or without the help of central government.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for coming in this morning. Of course, we know we'll be hearing more from you over the next 2 days.
Thank both of you as always. It's a pleasure. I enjoy being here with you, and going to be 2 long bruising days tomorrow and Friday. But once again, thanks everybody. Thank you so much.
We're going to go ahead now and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about tips for travel to Mexico.